Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're digging into a story that's been making headlines, a major U.S. military action in Nigeria. And, it's raised a lot of questions.
So here's the deal. On Christmas Day, of all days, the US military comes out and announces it's just launched what it's calling powerful and deadly strikes in northwestern Nigeria. I mean, that's a huge deal and a pretty significant move, especially given the timing.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Almost right away, we started hearing two totally different versions of the story. You had the US calling it this heroic rescue mission, but their Nigerian partners, they were describing it as just a planned out counterterrorism op. So what's the real story here? Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start by looking at how the United States framed this whole thing. And wow, the language coming out of the White House was intense, super strong, and really specific. You had President Trump calling the targets terrorist scum and making it crystal clear that the whole point of the mission was to stop the killing of innocent Christians. So the message they were sending was unmistakable. This was all about a religiously motivated rescue.
And it wasn't just about the strike itself. The way the U.S. talked about it, you could tell they were trying to make a much bigger point. I mean, think about it. The timing on Christmas Day, the defense secretary posting Merry Christmas right after, it all feels very deliberate. It was all part of this narrative of a massive blow against so-called radical Islamic terrorism. And apparently, this whole thing had been in the planning stages since November.
But like I said, that's only one side of the coin. The Nigerian government, who were supposed to be partners in all this, well, they started telling a completely different story. And when you put the two stories side by side, the difference is just night and day. The U.S. says, we're rescuing Christians. Nigeria says, this has nothing to do with any one religion. The U.S. calls it a powerful strike, making it sound like they went in alone. Nigeria calls it a joint operation and says, hey, we gave you the intelligence for this. And that Christmas Day timing? For the U.S., it was a powerful message. For Nigeria, just a coincidence? Okay, so this massive difference in how they're framing it leads us to a really important question. It's a question that gets right to the heart of why the U.S. said they did this in the first place. Basically, is the White House's main claim that jihadists are primarily targeting and killing Christians? Is that actually true? Does the data back it up? Well, when you look at the data, the short answer seems to be no. You've got independent groups that monitor conflicts, and they say there's no evidence that Christians are being killed more than Muslims. In fact, if you look at the analysis from ACLED, it shows the complete opposite. Most of the victims of these groups are actually Muslim. A Nigeria official put it pretty simply. The militants just target people across faiths. So if the narrative is complicated, let's look at the target itself. Who actually got hit in these strikes? Turns out, it wasn't one of the groups you might have heard of before. The group that was targeted is known as Lakurawa, and they're kind of the new kids on the block, so to speak. They're a splinter group aligned with IS, but they're not even originally from Nigeria. They came from the Sahel region and have only just recently started setting up shop inside the country. And this is a really important detail. The operation didn't go after the main, big, established IS group in Nigeria. That's ISWAP. They operate way over in the northeast. No, this strike hit this smaller, newer group that's popped up in a totally different area, the northwest. That's a key distinction. To really get what's going on here, we have to zoom out a little. This one airstrike, it's really just one piece of a much, much bigger and more complicated puzzle about the security situation in Nigeria. Yeah, if you look at the timeline, you can see this Christmas strike didn't just come out of nowhere. It's really just the latest development in a conflict that's been changing and evolving for more than 10 years. It started with Boko Haram, then you had groups like ISWAP break off, and now you've got these other groups like Lakurawa trying to move in and set up their own turf. And it's so important to remember that Nigeria is dealing with more than just one problem. You've got this jihadist insurgency up in the north, which is what we've been focusing on. But at the same time, there are totally separate, really deadly conflicts happening in the middle of the country. These are more about resources, fights over land and water between herders and farmers. Now, religion can get mixed up in that, but it's a different beast from the insurgency. And it's worth pointing out that in those conflicts, horrible things have been done by all sides.
So what's the bottom line here? It's that a simple headline about a military strike, well, it's almost never the whole story. This one event really shows us just how tangled everything is. You've got international politics, you've got these really deep local conflicts, and you have these powerful competing stories all wrapped up together. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. When one single event can be framed as both a joint operation and a religious rescue, it really makes you wonder, right? How are we supposed to tell the difference between what's a fact and what's just a narrative being pushed? It seems like in the world we live in today, understanding why a story is being told a certain way is just as important as the story itself.